All right, let's continue to talk a bit about macro and tariffs and all other things. Jim O'Neill, former UK Treasury Minister, former Goldman Sachs Asset Management Chairman, joins us now. Why don't we start off on tariffs, particularly on this news in terms of India, Jim? I mean, it's a moving target on so many different countries, whether it's India or Brazil or others. What are your latest thoughts?
Well, he seems to be having a go at the two BRICS that most people would have thought were the least likely, given that India and Brazil are democracies. And, of course, I think the Modi government will be still pretty stunned, given that when Modi visited Trump earlier in the year, I think the general view in India was that they'd kind of figured a way of the buddy system working so well for them. So this is has broader connotations than just the obviously very important in itself tariff influence on price making in India. And I can't help thinking that, the flip side of Trump occasionally threatening the whole BRICS crowd about if you do anything to sort of threaten the supremacy of the dollar, you're going to get whacked. But by doing things like this, India especially, which was probably the one that was least into the sort of anti-US part of the BRICS group, might start to have a bit of a rethink about that. And I would have thought the last thing the US would have wanted is India and China trying to be a bit friendlier than they've been for a very long time. So this has got all sorts of potential big picture ramifications beyond just the very important thing of the tariffs. But separately from that, of course, what stands out is how generously, on a relative basis, China seems to be being treated about a growing number of issues, which in itself is not what you would have expected 6 months ago.
No, and I made that point even about Russian oil. Yeah, they're at 30% right now. Those talks continue. Now, that said, of course, things can change very quickly. And as you well know, leading to, of course, a word we've used so often and many others have, uncertainty. I mean, I am curious as to what your thoughts are about just how uncertain it can be, given we still don't know what the playing field really fully looks like, other than we do know here in the U.S. we're talking 15, 18% tariffs probably being the average.
I mean, David, all I can say, it's a bit facetious, but I'm glad I'm not the CEO or CFO of a major global multinational, because you wouldn't have a blinking clue what you're supposed to be doing the following week or possibly the following day. So I guess the most logical thing which is going on is that the inventory management of any of these kind of companies is just being a lot more closely monitored and managed by all sorts of different industries, because what else can you do?
Yeah.
The other thing, which obviously follows from it, bringing it to domestic state of affairs in the US, we're going through this mood at the moment, as exemplified by the relatively strong bond and equity markets, that it doesn't seem to matter, and the US can just sort of sail through it, which I can't imagine that is going to be a persistent mood, because it does not make sense. I'm still sufficiently old school that the idea that the US can apply this scale of tariffs and it to have no sustained impact on real incomes or relative prices and possibly inflation in the US seems to me to be slightly in the crazy
Jim,
category.
That's the question, because to your point, the administration would say, hey, the economy's doing just fine. We're collecting a lot in revenues, by the way, offsetting our budget deficit to some extent. So when do we start to then really feel this impact that you're saying we cannot potentially avoid?
Well, of course, this takes me directly back to last week's latest controversy, and arguably one of Trump's biggest in response to the labour market figures. I think I was joking with some of your producers when we were setting up the time to come on. I remember the days where a pretty prominent primary bond dealer nearly went bust betting on a non-farm payroll number, and a few months later, by the time it had been revised, they would have made a fortune if it would have been the same. So the idea that the current leadership of the Labour Department is fiddling the employment numbers is kind of completely crazy. But if you put that in the context of the high-frequency leading indicators like the ISM survey that we had just the past couple of days, it looks to me that the US economy is slowing. And I don't really see that many indicators that are suggesting anything to the contrary. Fortunately, they're only slowing gently. And what are the causes of that? Are, as always, as complex as ever, but it seems to me there's some pretty obvious candidates, including all this uncertainty and the fact that companies are having to somehow try to balance between keeping profit margins up and adding on import prices that are going to end up partially, if not significantly, going to the consumer.
Do you expect that to slow even further from here, especially given just the cross currents of policy that you outlined, what's happening, at the Fed, what's happening with tariffs, what's happening with the one big beautiful bill?
Yeah.
It feels like there's a lot that's kind of crossing over itself that makes the second half of the year even more uncertain.
I mean, I think the one thing that is emerged from the past week from all of this, with the caveat of, let's see the next inflation data, is the Fed is, as the markets have quickly moved towards doing, much more likely to now start cutting rates. And obviously that should help to a degree. But I think unless Trump can find a way of somehow not wanting to lash out at country X or Y whenever he sees something that he disapproves of, whether it be the treatment of a past leader in Brazil's case or whatever it might be. Switzerland, I mean, the whole country of Switzerland is in complete bafflement as to why they've been whacked with so much tariff. And unless there's a bit more calmer view about all of that, I think the uncertainty, to be honest, as crazy as it sounds, might only get even more, which makes the job of policymakers, including the Fed, increasingly difficult, in my view.
Jim, going to leave it there for now, but always appreciate your insights. Thank you.
All right, thanks for having me on, guys. Good luck.